Okay, picture this. You're a junior sales rep, right? You've just stepped into the fast-paced world of international trade and boom, you're staring at a completely blank quote sheet. It's terrifying. You're probably sitting there thinking that typing the wrong three little letters is going to wipe out all of your company's hard-earned profits. Well, take a deep breath. In this explainer, we're going to completely demystify Incoterms 2020. We are turning all that complex, dry legal jargon into your everyday survival guide for quoting. I mean, FOB, CIF, DDP, just hearing these abbreviations might literally make your heart skip a beat. A lot of rookies, when they face a client inquiry, they kind of just panic and pick a term that looks familiar. Big mistake. That usually leads to massive headaches when goods suddenly get stuck at customs, or worse, lost at sea. And how does that end? Usually with an absolutely furious client and your company absorbing some huge losses. But hey, don't worry. Today, we're diffusing these quoting landmines once and for all.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The real challenge of quoting. 2. Clarifying risk and cost. 3. Quickly choosing trade terms. 4. Cracking common quoting landmines. And 5. Mastering 3 cost control keys. Let's dive right in. Starting with Section 1, the real challenge of quoting.
You know, a lot of newcomers think a quote is just, well, production cost plus a profit margin, right? Honestly, if only it were that simple. When you ship a product overseas, it's like navigating a maze of hidden fees. They're just lurking along the route. We're talking export customs, terminal handling fees at the port or airport, the actual main freight, which is super expensive, cargo insurance, and even import tariffs and VAT when it finally arrives. If you don't calculate exactly who pays for what, your profit margin, yeah, it's going to get eaten away piece by piece at literally every logistical checkpoint. Moving to Section 2, clarifying risk and cost. So how exactly should we be splitting these costs with our clients? Well, the absolutely crucial thing to wrap your head around is that in international trade, cost and risk are two completely different things. Cost is simply about who pays the transit bills, the freight, the customs. Risk, on the other hand, is about who actually absorbs the financial loss if the goods are damaged, lost, or, I don't know, fall off a ship into the middle of the ocean. Too many rookies think, hey, if I pay the freight, I must carry the risk. Actually, scratch that. It's a huge misconception. In the real world, the exact moment cost transfers and the moment risk transfers are often in totally different places. Think about it like buying apples from a local orchard. If you tell the client to send their own truck to your factory to pick up the apples themselves, and you literally do nothing else, that's EXW, X-Works. Now, if you agree to meet them halfway and hand the goods over to a logistics provider at a port, that's FCA. And if you decide to handle the whole shebang, freight, insurance, even the import taxes, and deliver those apples right to their front door, that's DDP. It's basically the ultimate premium delivery service. Naturally, the more responsibility you take on, the higher the costs you absolutely have to bake into your quote. All right, Section 3, quickly choosing trade terms. So there are 11 different Incoterms in total, and honestly, looking at them all at once can make your head spin, but we can simplify this instantly by looking at it through the lens of control. If your buyer wants maximum control over the logistics and customs to squeeze out the absolute cheapest factory price, you quote them EXW or FCA. Simple as that. If you both kind of want to balance the responsibility, like the seller handles everything before loading and the buyer takes over after, then you're looking at FOB or CIF. But if your client wants a totally hands-off experience, they just want the stuff to magically appear at their office, that's when you quote DAP or DDP. Just make absolutely sure you aggressively pad that price with all the potential freight and tax costs. Section 4, cracking common quoting landmines. Okay, let's play out a classic rookie nightmare. Imagine this. You're thrilled because you just closed a massive order using CIF terms. You paid for the main freight, you paid for the insurance, you're feeling great. But then a major storm hits during transit, the goods get totally wrecked, and your client calls you up, absolutely furious, demanding compensation. You're probably sitting there scratching your head thinking, wait a minute, didn't I buy insurance? Why on earth is the client losing money? Welcome to the most terrifying trap of the C-class terms. Here's the blind spot with CIF. Yes, you paid the freight cost all the way to the destination port, but the risk, that actually transferred to the buyer the exact millisecond those goods were loaded onto the ship at the origin port, which means if there's damage out at sea, the buyer's the one who has to file the insurance claim, not you. And trust me, it actually gets worse. Under standard CIF rules, you, the seller, are only required to buy the bare minimum insurance coverage. It's called ICCC, and it basically only covers absolute catastrophes, like fires or the whole ship sinking.
If the goods are just damaged from, say, rough waters or heavy turbulence, it pays out absolutely nothing, zero. So here's your new standard operating procedure. Next time you quote CIF for high value or fragile items, you absolutely must advise the buyer to upgrade to ICCA full coverage. Handing out that kind of professional advice, it instantly elevates you from a confused rookie to a deeply trusted trade expert.
And then we have what is arguably the most common mistake in the entire industry. You'll always hear industry veterans telling rookies, oh, if it goes by sea, just use FOB. Well, the International Chamber of Commerce has an explicit warning about this. If your cargo is packed in a shipping container, stop using FOB. Why? Because under FOB, the risk transfers when goods are loaded directly onto the ship. But think about it. Containers are usually dropped off days earlier at a container yard, right? If a fire breaks out at that yard, who's responsible? It creates this massive, ugly gray area. To completely eliminate that ambiguity for containerized freight, always switch to FCA. With FCA, the risk transfers the very second you hand the goods over to the carrier. Problem solved.
Finally, Section 5, Mastering Cost Control Keys. Look, by avoiding those landmines we just talked about, you're already doing better than half the industry. But supply chains, they're constantly shifting. And top-tier sales reps know they have to factor 3 massive macro variables into their costs. First up, the maritime industry's push for net zero emissions. That means green shipping premiums are absolutely going to be passed down to your freight rates. Second, geopolitical tensions or even climate issues, like what we see happening in the Red Sea, are forcing route detours that can cause transit costs to just skyrocket overnight. And third, which is probably the deadliest one, highly unpredictable and rapidly shifting import tariffs.
The warning I want to give you here is incredibly stark. If you quote a client DDP just because you really want to win the deal, you are officially absorbing the importing country's tariffs. Imagine this. While your goods are floating somewhere in the ocean, the importing country suddenly slops a 20% retaliatory tariff on your nation's products. Guess what? Your company pays that massive bill. A highly profitable order turns into a total financial disaster in the blink of an eye. In this current era of instability, you've got to use DDP with extreme caution. Better yet, switch to DAP, where the buyer handles the taxes. That's how you protect your margins. So, what's the big takeaway here? Incoterms aren't just dry, boring legal text. They're literally your strongest daily weapon for managing risk and protecting your company's bottom line. By nailing down those risk transfer points, picking the absolute right terms, and staying sharp on global macro costs, you stop being an anxious quoting rookie. You transform into a formidable trade warrior who brings real, tangible competitive advantages to the table. In an era of shifting tariffs and global crises, you have to ask yourself, are your quotes protecting your profits or just giving them away? Hopefully this explainer leaves you feeling completely confident the next time you sit down with a blank quote sheet.